The moment I said I do, the world I knew shattered. The smiles that once felt warm turned into icy stares. My own blood, my own family declared me a stranger. And in that moment, I made a choice. Not to beg, not to cry, but to become unstoppable. Jasmine was never one to follow the rules blindly. When she met Aaron, it wasn't love at first sight. It was a fire that refused to be ignored. But choosing him meant choosing a path her family could never forgive. Their words cut deep. You're no longer one of us. You are alone now. Alone, but not broken. What followed wasn't a story of tears and regret. It was a story of hard choices, burning ambitions, and a woman forging her destiny, a woman who refused to bow even when the world tried to break her. The first time Jasmine saw Aaron, she didn't know her life was about to change. It wasn't a movie moment, not at first glance. It was the subtle way he smiled at a stranger, the quiet confidence in his stride, the warmth in his eyes that lingered just a little too long. She had always been careful, meticulous, obedient, a daughter who never gave her parents a reason to frown. But Aaron, he broke that careful rhythm like a sudden storm through a calm sky. It started innocently enough, a shared seat at a cafe, a dropped notebook, a conversation that should have lasted only a few minutes. Yet as their voices mingled and laughter slipped between them, Jasmine felt something she had never allowed herself to feel: reckless curiosity. "Do you always sit alone?" Aaron asked, his voice smooth yet tinged with curiosity. "I usually," she replied, surprised by the flutter in her chest. She looked away, trying to hide it, but the warmth in her cheeks betrayed her. "Mind if I join you?" And just like that, a barrier she had built her entire life began to crack. They met secretly at first, small glances at the library, whispered conversations under the shade of old trees, coffee dates that seemed to last for hours. Each meeting felt like a rebellion against the world Jasmine knew, against the rules she had always followed. Love, she discovered, was not always a thunderclap. Sometimes it was a slow, burning fire, consuming you quietly until it left no room for anything else. But the shadow of her family's expectations loomed large. Jasmine's parents were strict, controlling, the kind of people who believed in appearances over emotions. They had already decided the man she would marry, a family friend's son, someone suitable in every way, someone safe. Aaron was none of that. He was different, passionate, free-spirited, and a little wild. And the more Jasmine tried to resist, the more she realized she couldn't. One evening, under a sky painted in hues of orange and violet, Aaron took her hands in his and looked into her eyes. "Jasmine, I know your family will never approve, but I can't let you go. Will you run away with me? Start a life that's ours, not theirs?" Her heart pounded like a drum, a chaotic rhythm that matched the storm inside her. She had imagined this moment 1,000 times, but the reality was terrifying. To defy her family meant risking everything: their love, their protection, her place in the world. I, I whispered, her voice breaking. "I don't know if I can." "You can," he said firmly, his eyes unwavering. "You just have to choose your happiness or their expectations, not both." For the first time, Jasmine realized that happiness was a choice, and love was worth every risk. The decision was made that night, quiet, deliberate, and irreversible. They married in a small ceremony, far from the eyes of her family, far from the judgment she knew would follow. And as they exchanged vows, Jasmine felt a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. She had stepped off the cliff, and there was no turning back. The next morning, her phone buzzed with messages she would never forget.
angry, hurt, and accusatory words from her parents, her mother's voice shaking with fury. "You are no longer our daughter. How dare you disgrace this family?" Her father's messages were harsher, colder. "Do not ever contact us again. You are dead to us." She read the messages in silence, tears blurring her vision. Her world had split in two, one half tethered to the family she had always known, and the other reaching for a future she could only imagine. But in Aaron's arms, she felt an unfamiliar strength. She realized that love was not just about passion, it was about courage. And she had chosen courage. That night, as the city lights glittered like stars beneath their small apartment window, Jasmen made a vow. She would survive this, alone if she had to. She would build a life so strong that no one could ever break her spirit again. And deep down, she knew something else. The woman who had walked out of her family's life that day would not be the same woman who would face the world tomorrow. She would become harder, sharper, stronger. The fire had been lit, and there was no extinguishing it.
The phone rang incessantly, vibrating on the small wooden table between Jasmen and Aaron. Each buzz felt like a hammer against her chest. She had known this would happen, the messages, the calls, the anger, but nothing could have prepared her for the sheer weight of rejection. She glanced at the screen. Her mother's name flashed again. She swallowed hard. Her hand shook as she pressed ignore. Aaron placed a steadying hand on hers. "You don't have to answer them," he said softly. "They've made their choice. Now it's your turn." Jasmen nodded, but inside the pain was suffocating. Growing up, she had believed in unconditional love, in family as a sanctuary. That sanctuary had been shattered in an instant. The people who had once been her world now called her a disgrace, a mistake, a stranger. Her first night alone without them was the hardest. The house felt silent, too quiet. Memories haunted every corner, her mother teaching her to cook, her father's stern advice, laughter in the living room. And now, silence. Cold, empty silence. Days passed, and the messages and calls did not stop. Her father's anger was a constant drumbeat, her mother's disappointment a knife twisting deeper. Even distant relatives sent words of judgment. Jasmen's name became a cautionary tale, a story whispered with shame. At first, she considered giving in. Maybe if she apologized, promised to undo her choices, her family would forgive her. Maybe she could have both love and family. But the thought of betraying herself, of betraying Aaron, the man she had chosen, was unbearable. She realized that she couldn't ask for permission to live her life. The path she had chosen was lonely, yes, but it was hers. The first few weeks were brutal. Money was tight, friends were scarce. The couple moved into a tiny apartment, its walls bare, its floor cold. Jasmen worked multiple jobs, waitressing, tutoring, freelancing, anything to make ends meet. She learned quickly that independence was expensive, exhausting, and terrifying. But with every challenge, she grew stronger. The fear that had once gripped her heart began to morph into determination. Every time she felt the urge to cry, she reminded herself, "I chose this. I will survive. I will rise." One evening, after a 12-hour shift, Jasmen collapsed onto the couch. Aaron handed her a cup of tea, his eyes full of quiet support. "You're amazing," he said. "I've never seen someone fight so hard for what they believe in." Jasmen smiled weakly. "I don't feel amazing. I feel broken." "You're not broken. You're awake. You're alive. And you're building a life that no one can take from you. That's more than amazing. It's unstoppable." The words sank deep, planting a seed of resilience that would grow into a forest of strength. She realized that being cut off by her family wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a woman who would no longer bend for anyone.
The days turned into months. Each struggle honed her resolve. She faced insults from strangers, judgment from society, and moments of crippling doubt. But each time she reminded herself why she had chosen this path. And then came the first taste of respect, not from her family, but from the world she was carving for herself. Her small business, started out of a desperate need to survive, began attracting attention. Her dedication, intelligence, and honesty made people notice her. Slowly, very slowly, doors began to open. Yet, no matter how much she achieved, the pain of her family's absence lingered. Nights were hardest. Sometimes she would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, imagining their faces, wishing things could be different. But she never regretted her choice. Not once. Because she had learned the most important lesson of all. Love that demands you betray yourself is not love at all. And as Jasmen stared out of her apartment window, watching the city lights flicker like distant stars, she made another vow. One day they will see me, not the daughter they wanted, but the woman I became, and they will understand that what they tried to break only made me stronger. Her family turned her back. The world doubted her. But Jasmen is learning a truth that no one can teach. When life tries to break you, it's the fire inside that will forge you into something unstoppable.
Jasmen had learned one painful truth. Freedom came at a cost. Every corner of her small apartment reminded her of that cost. The peeling paint, the creaking floorboards, the hum of the old refrigerator. Each sound was a reminder that nothing was easy anymore. But she was determined. She had chosen this path, and there was no turning back. Her days became a relentless rhythm of work and exhaustion. She waited tables during the day, tutored children in the evenings, and stayed up late writing freelance articles online. Every penny she earned was a victory, a small but tangible proof that she could survive without her family's support. And yet, survival was more than financial. It was emotional warfare. She endured whispers from neighbors who thought she was too young to make such bold choices, ridicule from colleagues who questioned her decisions, and judgmental glances from strangers who didn't understand why she had left the safety of her family. One rainy evening, drenched from the sudden downpour, she walked home alone. Her coat clung to her, her shoes squished in the water, and her heart ached for the warmth of home. But there was no home waiting for her, only the cold streets and her own determination. She found herself in a small cafe, sipping a hot cup of coffee to shake off the chill. She watched the couples around her, families laughing together, and felt the sharp sting of loneliness. And yet, in that solitude, she found clarity. She realized that no one could give her happiness but herself. No one could validate her choices but her own heart. It wasn't easy. There were nights when she cried herself to sleep, overwhelmed by exhaustion and grief. Nights when she questioned whether love was worth losing everything else. But every morning she rose. Every morning she reminded herself that she had chosen love, she had chosen courage, and she had chosen freedom. Slowly, she began to find her footing. Her freelance work grew steadily, earning her recognition and respect. Her tutoring sessions became popular, and she started saving money, building a small but stable foundation for her life. Aaron was her anchor. He worked alongside her, providing support, encouragement, and unwavering love. He never let her forget that she wasn't alone, that together they could weather any storm. One evening, as they sat on the small balcony of their apartment watching the city lights twinkle like distant stars, Aaron took her hand. "Look at how far you've come," he said softly. "You're not the scared girl I met months ago. You're stronger, braver, unstoppable." Jasmen smiled, the corners of her mouth trembling. "I still feel scared sometimes," she admitted, "but I can't stop now. I won't stop. Not for them, not for anyone." And she meant it.
She began to reinvent herself in ways she never imagined. She took night classes in business management, learning how to grow her small ventures. She networked with people in her field, attending seminars, joining groups, and slowly building a reputation as someone intelligent, capable, and determined. Every small achievement was a victory over the pain her family had inflicted. Every successful day, every dollar earned, every compliment received became fuel for the fire growing inside her. But Jasmen also learned the harder lessons of the world. Trust was fragile. Some friends had ulterior motives. Some mentors sought to exploit her ambitions. But she became sharper, more discerning. She learned to read people, to anticipate betrayal, to protect herself without closing her heart. By the end of her first year on her own, Jasmen had transformed. The girl who had once trembled at her family's rejection was gone. In her place stood a woman of purpose, of ambition, of quiet power. And yet, deep down, a shadow lingered. The shadow of her family's absence, the pain of their betrayal, and the question that haunted her every success. Would they ever see the woman she had become and regret the day they pushed her away? She didn't know. What she did know was this: whatever the world threw at her next, she would not break. She would face it head on. She would survive. She would thrive. Because in losing everything, Jasmen had discovered something far more valuable than comfort or approval. She had discovered herself. They thought abandoning her would break her. They were wrong. Every challenge, every betrayal, every sleepless night only made her stronger. And now, the world is about to see just how unstoppable she has become.
Jasmen woke up every morning with a single thought: I will not be small anymore. The months of survival, of grinding through exhaustion and heartbreak, had forged something new inside her. She was no longer the scared, obedient daughter her family had tried to control. She was a woman with vision, ambition, and fire in her veins. She started investing in her talents. The tutoring she had once done to survive became a full-fledged academy she ran online, offering courses and workshops for children and young adults. Her articles, once a side hustle, began attracting clients willing to pay well for her work. Slowly, steadily, she built a life that was not just sustainable, it was thriving. Aaron watched her transformation in awe. "You've become unstoppable," he said one evening as they reviewed her latest business report. Jasmen smiled, tired but triumphant. "I'm just getting started," she replied. The city began to notice her. Invitations to speak at conferences, network with entrepreneurs, and collaborate with other professionals started pouring in. People who had once ignored her now sought her insight. The girl who had been cut off, shamed, and abandoned was becoming a force no one could ignore. But with power came new challenges. Competitors tried to undermine her, envious of her rapid rise. Some questioned her integrity, spreading rumors about her success being too fast, too convenient. Each attack tested her patience and resolve. Yet for the first time, Jasmen didn't crumble. She didn't plead or explain. She acted. She worked harder, smarter, and with precision. She learned the art of strategy, of negotiation, of asserting her authority without losing her heart. Her hard work paid off. Within 2 years, her academy had become a respected institution, her online presence influential, and her financial stability undeniable. She was no longer surviving, she was thriving, and the woman who had walked out of her family's life was now a figure of power and inspiration. But power wasn't just about wealth or influence. Jasmen also discovered the strength of her own voice. She began mentoring young women who, like her, had been forced into corners by circumstances or controlling families. She shared her story, her struggles, and her triumphs, inspiring a new generation to fight for themselves. The transformation was not just professional, it was personal.
The pain that had once weighed her down had become a tool, a weapon, and a shield. She had learned to channel every ounce of hurt into determination. Every sleepless night, every judgmental glance, every moment of doubt had been converted into momentum. And somewhere, in the quiet of the night, she allowed herself a small thought. A dangerous one, perhaps, but intoxicating nonetheless. They will see me. They will remember the daughter they disowned, and they will understand that what they tried to destroy only made me stronger. Jasmen had built her power not for revenge, not for validation, but for herself. Yet the knowledge that her family's judgment would one day meet her triumph added a silent, thrilling tension to every step. Erin held her hand as they looked out over the skyline from her new office, the city alive with lights and possibilities. "Do you ever think about them?" he asked gently. "Sometimes," she admitted, her eyes hard but glimmering with fire. "Not because I need them, but because I want them to see what they lost. I want them to see the woman I've become." "And they will," Erin said, his voice steady, "because you're unstoppable." Jasmen smiled, not for him, not for anyone else, but for herself. The girl who had been abandoned, judged, and humiliated had risen. She was no longer just surviving. She was commanding, inspiring, and building a legacy that would outlast anyone's opinion. And in that moment, she realized the harder life tried to break her, the harder she became. Stronger than anger, stronger than grief, stronger than betrayal. The fire inside her burned brighter than ever, and nothing, not even the shadow of her family's rejection, could extinguish it. They thought leaving her would be the end. They were wrong. Every challenge, every insult, every sleepless night forged a woman they could never have imagined. Stronger, smarter, and unstoppable. Jasmen's journey has just begun. The first message came unexpectedly. A simple text, almost timid in its tone. "Jasmen, can we talk?" Her hands froze over the phone. She stared at the screen, her heart hammering. It was from her mother. After all these years of silence, after the anger, after the pain, they were reaching out. She didn't reply immediately. Days passed as she wrestled with emotions that had been buried for years. Part of her ached at the thought of reconciliation, at the possibility of feeling the warmth of family again. Another part, sharper now, seared with the memory of rejection and humiliation, warned her against opening that door. Erin watched silently, letting her process. "You don't owe them anything," he said gently. "You built yourself. That's more than enough." Jasmen nodded, but the curiosity lingered. Not for forgiveness, but for clarity. She needed to know if the people who had abandoned her could even recognize the woman she had become. The first meeting was awkward. Her parents arrived at her office, faces a mixture of guilt, pride, and hesitation. Her mother's eyes glistened with unshed tears. Her father's jaw was set, though the rigidity couldn't hide the shock of seeing her like this. Jasmen stood, tall and composed, a contrast to the frightened girl they had cast out. She was dressed impeccably, her posture commanding, her eyes sharp and unwavering. The woman before them was a stranger in some ways, but the daughter they had tried to erase. "Jasmen," her mother began, voice trembling, we've heard about your achievements. Jasmen raised a hand, silencing her. "Save it," she said firmly, but not cruelly. "I'm not here to discuss my success to make you feel guilty. I'm here to understand why you pushed me away, because I deserve to know why the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally abandoned me for choosing my happiness." Her father opened his mouth, closed it, and finally said, We were angry. We didn't understand. We thought you were making a mistake." Jasmen's laugh was soft, almost bitter. "A mistake?" she echoed. I survived your mistake. I built a life from nothing, turned it into something remarkable, and became someone you would barely recognize. And yet you think you have the right to judge me now?" Her mother's tears fell freely. "We were wrong, Jasmen. We see that now. Can you forgive us?" Jasmen paused. Forgiveness was tempting, but she'd learned something far more important over the years. She didn't need validation from anyone. She didn't need their approval to feel whole. "I forgive you," she said, slowly, deliberately, "but don't mistake that for weakness. I forgive you because I don't want to carry your hatred anymore. I forgive you because I've learned that my life isn't about being what you want me to be. It's about being who I am." Her parents bowed their heads, humbled by the woman they had underestimated for so long. For the first time, they saw her not as their daughter who had defied them, but as a woman who had conquered every obstacle and emerged unshakable. Jasmen didn't linger. She turned, her posture straight, her gaze steady. She walked back to her office, leaving them in a mix of awe, regret, and reflection. That night, as she sat on her balcony overlooking the city, Aaron joined her. "You handled that beautifully," he said. Jasmen leaned back, feeling the cool night air on her face. "It wasn't about them," she said quietly. "It was about me. I needed to prove, most of all to myself, that I could survive, that I could rise, that I could define my own worth." Aaron smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "And you did. You're unstoppable." She nodded, feeling a calm strength she had never known before. Her past, the abandonment, the betrayal, the heartbreak, had shaped her, but it did not define her. She was no longer the frightened girl who had been kicked out of her family's life. She was a woman who had chosen herself, built her empire, and mastered her destiny. And deep in her heart, she knew this truth: no one could ever take that power away. Jasmen had faced the world and herself and emerged stronger than ever.
The skyline glittered with life as Jasmen stepped onto the terrace of her office, high above the city that had once felt so intimidating and unforgiving. She breathed deeply, letting the night air wash over her. Each light below seemed to echo her journey, the long nights, the struggles, the doubts, and the relentless determination that had brought her here. This was her kingdom now, not built on privilege or approval, but on grit, perseverance, and the unwavering choice to never bow to anyone's control. Her business empire had grown beyond what she had imagined in those early days of survival. Her academy now reached thousands of students online, offering mentorship programs, scholarships, and workshops that empowered young women to chase their dreams regardless of societal pressures. Articles and interviews praised her insight, her vision, and her resilience. But Jasmen knew her greatest triumph wasn't in the numbers or the accolades. It was in herself. She had risen above betrayal, heartbreak, and abandonment. She had discovered her power, her voice, and her worth. Aaron joined her on the terrace, his hand warm in hers. "You've done it," he said simply, awe and pride in his voice. "We've done it," Jasmen corrected, squeezing his hand. "Together." She thought back to the girl who had run from her family's judgment, terrified and alone. That girl had been tested, broken, and forced to fight for every scrap of dignity. But in her pain, she had found her strength. In her loneliness, she had discovered herself. Even her family, now more humbled than proud, had witnessed the woman she had become. They had seen her resilience, her intellect, her courage, but they would never fully understand the fire that had driven her. And that was fine. She didn't need their validation anymore. Jasmen smiled softly to herself. "I am whole. I am powerful. I am unstoppable." She had learned the most important lesson. True freedom and happiness come not from approval, but from self-belief. Months later, she organized a grand seminar inviting young women from across the country to hear her story.
She spoke openly about her struggles, the family that had turned away, the battles she had fought, and the victories she had earned. Her words resonated with thousands, proof that her journey was more than personal, it was universal. After the seminar, as Jasmen walked off the stage, a young girl approached her with tears in her eyes. "I've been through something similar," the girl whispered. "I thought I was alone, but you showed me I can survive." Jasmen knelt, placing a hand on the girl's shoulder. "You're never alone," she said softly. "The world may turn against you, but the fire inside you is yours. Nurture it, fight for it, and never let anyone tell you who you are. You are unstoppable, just like me." And in that moment, Jasmen realized that her journey had come full circle. The woman who had been abandoned, judged, and underestimated had not only built her empire, but also inspired others to rise from their own ashes. She turned toward Aaron, who smiled knowingly. "Are you ready for the next chapter?" asked Aaron. Jasmen's gaze swept across the city, her heart filled with hope, pride, and determination. "Always," she said. No one could touch her now, not her past, not her critics, not even the pain of abandonment. Jasmen had become the woman she was always meant to be, resilient, fearless, and unstoppable. The fire that had been lit when she chose love over fear had become a blazing inferno, illuminating her path and inspiring everyone who crossed it. And as the night embraced the city, Jasmen smiled, knowing one unshakable truth. Her life was hers alone, and she had won it, completely, fiercely, and without apology. They said she would fall. They said she wouldn't survive. But Jasmen rose, not just for herself, but for every soul who's ever been abandoned, judged, or underestimated. This is the story of a woman who turned heartbreak into power and pain into triumph, and her journey will inspire generations to come.